Hello, 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 my darling listeners, and how are you? Now, I'm fully aware that I haven't recorded a podcast now for honestly what feels like a good few weeks, but it's only been a couple of weeks. So since I got back from my holiday in Crete, I've just been really busy with work and I've just felt really, really tired. I've started looking into why have I been feeling so tired, and I think I might have found a reason. I'm diabetic, and I've been diabetic since I was about how old was I? About 11 years old. And I have been on insulin, obviously, since then, type 1 diabetic. And I'm starting to get to an age now where I am, how old am I now? You always know how old you get when you have to start thinking about how old you are. 36. And I'm getting to an age through doing lots of research online where when you have diabetes, obviously your body isn't creating the hormone that it needs, being insulin. But it actually, as a result of being diabetic, I think there's 6 other hormones that your body doesn't create as well. So I think I've been feeling a bit of a hormone imbalance, if that makes sense, and I finally got to the bottom of it. So I'm in the middle of getting that sorted. I've also been trying to do lots of meditation using the binaural beats, and I've mentioned the binaural beats before, which are essentially where one frequency is played through one ear, slightly different frequency in the other ear, and it helps your brain get into different brainwave states. So like the delta, theta, or alpha states, all associated with different, obviously, moods and things like that. Sorry about that notification. That's because I haven't turned the volume off on the speakers. So I've been using those quite a lot. I've been using a company called Sacred Acoustics. I've actually got the founder of Sacred Acoustics coming onto the Soul Sync very soon to talk about what binaural beats are and why she created a whole company dedicated to them. And trust me, she can explain them much better than I do, so I won't even try and go into loads of detail about what they are now. But they have been allowing me to get much more into a meditative state. And one thing about my mediumship, and I'm going to be talking about my mediumship, like I've said a lot more over on the YouTube channel, is I've had a battle with meditation for quite a while now because I just can't sit still. I'm telling you, I just can't sit still. I'm like ants in my pants. And as soon as I go to do a meditation, honestly, it does take me a while to get into the zone. And what I found is through using the binaural beats, they allow me to much more quickly and easily start to calm down, start to quieten the mind, which then allows me to build my power, build my energy, and then obviously go about trying to connect to the spirit world. Now, this next guest actually ties really nicely into everything because I've been practicing my mediumship and I'm going to continue practicing it. And it is a bit hard at times to think where to practice it because I've gone to the Spiritualist Church and it turns out, and for no one that knows what the Spiritualist Church is, that's in England. We have the Spiritualist National Union. Spiritualism is a religion, and as such, we have Spiritualist churches. Been going to the Spiritualist Church for a good few weeks now, and we haven't done any mediumship or any readings as such, but we've been doing kind of more intuitive based stuff, more psychic stuff, I would say. So exercises with cards, being able to read the person, kind of giving soul readings. And it's occurred to me that I'm actually in an awareness circle, not a mediumship circle. So I've needed to try and think, how am I going to get some experience of actually doing my mediumship? And it is actually going quite well. So as well as enlisting the services of a tutor who's been really helpful in pointing me in the right direction, and actually it's been quite valuable to have one point of contact and one tutor rather than having input from lots and lots of different tutors. I found that to be quite helpful. Still early days with that. But I've been practicing my mediumship on a website called VerySoul. Now, for no one that knows what VerySoul is, it's a website where you can go on as a practicing medium, select an appointment slot, and then you will be paired by the wonders of the internet with another practicing budding medium, and then you go about each doing your reading, and at the end you give feedback. You don't do that, well, you obviously can give feedback to each other, but you fill in a form afterwards, which is very helpful because then you can actually look back at the person's feedback. What an amazing idea. So the concept is you have a profile, you go, you book an appointment, you literally log on to Zoom, you don't know who's opposite you, and you could be talking to someone anywhere over the world. Now, our next guest is Sally Hawke, who is actually the founder of VerySoul. Now, her story is really incredible because Sally has always had a strong intuition, but she had a major awakening that occurred in 2003 where she had a visitation from a loved one and who nobody knew had actually just passed because they was even in another country. And then through her research from this phenomenon, she quickly learned that these experiences are relatively common but are not discussed openly in many cultures. Now, Sally made her first purposeful mediumistic connection in March 2020. And I can't believe it because only the year later, after making her first purposeful, meaningful connection, she then essentially in October 2021, she I think it was around October 21, she started VerySoul, and it's grown incredibly to several thousand users in over 31 countries. It's now a really big platform, and not only is it used for practicing, clients can also go on and know that they've got a medium who is what they say they are, which I think is a great thing, especially in the world we live in of reviews and stuff like that. I know that there's a lot of mediums out there who don't have the best ethics, who might not be doing things in what is a good way. And I really think with mediumship as well, it's so important that it's done correctly and properly, especially when you're talking to people about their loved ones who've passed to the spirit world. And I think also on the subject of mediumship, I think that it's got to be done very, very, very carefully and with the best ethics, because people can cling on to words, especially when people are in a vulnerable situation or going through grief and whatnot. So it's going to be really interesting to talk to Sally today. Another thing about the VerySoul website, they've actually just brought out a whole new website with a whole new platform. So if you are looking to learn more about mediumship, perhaps develop your mediumship, it's a really good platform to use. So bit of a different intro for you today, but I wanted to give you a bit of a background, and I wanted to publish this really beautiful conversation with Sally because it very much ties into what I'm doing at the moment with my mediumship. I must say, I've done a couple of good readings recently, really excited about them. I actually had someone contact me who had seen one of my videos on YouTube and asked for a reading, and that went very well, which was super exciting. I really feel that I'm starting to get this psychic business locked down, and I feel that my mediumship is coming on, but it's a hard journey. It's not an easy journey. I'm still on a path of self-discovery, which I'm going to be my whole entire life. So there we go. Without further ado, here is the incredible Sally Hawke, the founder of VerySoul. So Sally, a big welcome to the Soul Sync podcast.
Thank you so much, Jason. It's great to be here, and thank you so much for what you're doing with the Soul Sync podcast.
Well, I say the same back to you, Sally, with what you're doing on VerySoul, and we're going to talk all about that. So I want to jump straight into your story because I mentioned a brief whistle-stop tour of it in the intro there, but it sounds fascinating. Tell us about, I guess, from the beginning, because you had a profound awakening in 2003 from a loved one.
I did, yeah. And so before I tell you my story, I just have to tell you, I find everybody's stories fascinating. So mine is just one in a drop of many. But my mother-in-law, she was in the hospital for a routine procedure. And my husband was visiting her. They lived in Montreal, and we lived in North Carolina at the time. And she was extraordinarily close to my daughter. My daughter was the only grandchild. She and her husband had been through very great trauma. And so they had lost most of their families because they were both Holocaust survivors. Oh, wow. And so their granddaughter meant everything to them. It was, the closeness there was something you can't really describe very well. But anyway, so when my mother-in-law was having this routine procedure, my daughter was 7. She was sleeping in bed with me that night because my husband was out visiting. And at about 4:30 in the morning, I woke up and there she was. And she was this beautiful energy. I couldn't see a face, and I couldn't tell you at the time how I knew that it was her, but I knew it was her. And I knew
Wow.
exactly why she was there. And she sat down on the bed and she was rubbing my daughter's back, and saying goodbye. And, I was so speechless. I was so overcome with the beauty of what was happening that it didn't dawn on me at the time to ask myself, how do I even know who that is? But I
Mm.
After a few minutes, she left. I woke my daughter up and I said, honey, did you notice? I think your bubby passed during the night. And did you recognize that? Did you experience that? She said, no, Mom, I was sleeping. But about 15 minutes later, my husband called and he said, I just got a call from the hospital. My mother passed unexpectedly during the night. And I said, I know, because she was here. And
Wow.
imagine, my husband was also an actuary by background. He's also a banker. For two analytics to have that experience, one of us had the experience and the other was hearing about the experience. My husband did not react well in the moment.
I, ca- I could imagine. And what an experience. How would you describe what happened? Was it a feeling or was it a knowing, or what was it that you felt in that moment?
It's what I saw. First, I saw energy. So I saw, um, uh, I want to call it a cloudy. I don't want to say ghostly because I just hate that term. It makes people sound scary, and I don't think
Yeah.
it was scary at all. She's a very, very loving person, but it was definitely kind of an energy cloud. And I
Mhm.
saw it with my eyes, and I didn't know what it was instantly, but at, when I just paused for a moment, then I knew it was her. And when she sat down in the bed and she was rubbing my daughter's back, then I knew why she was there. So
What was your kind of belief system before that had happened? Was you were you believing in this kind of spirit world, or what was the belief of Sally prior to this?
now you're going to out me, Jason.
We try not to out anyone on the Soul Sync, but it does occasionally happen, Sally. I'm sorry.
It has to happen sooner or later. I didn't really believe in anything. I was raised Catholic, went to a Catholic grade school and everything. And I knew that at least half of what they were saying didn't make sense. So I wasn't really religiously oriented. I was just focused on, material things. I was focused on friends and family and, the world here. I think I always left space for the possibility. And I knew
Mm,
that I had an easier time navigating than some people that I knew. I knew that um, there was this, my intuition was very strong. That's the way I thought of it.
It's very funny you say that because my experience was not the same in how it kind of came about, but I would have said I was an atheist because I don't believe in any religion, and I was of a very similar viewpoint. So this happened, and then what? That must have obviously been a catalyst for you to start thinking, well, hang on a minute, what's happened? Where did you go from there?
Yeah, absolutely. I went to the bookstore. I started reading every book I could find. I started searching on the internet, but the internet's not really very good for this stuff because you come across all sorts of, just weird stuff that I knew was just fraud. So I started looking specifically for universities and colleges that had done real research. I found some research that was going on at Duke University, University of Virginia, and I was looking for places that had, substance and credibility, and was slowly, hearing people's theories and hearing people's experiences and reading their books and things like that. So I was starting to feel like maybe there was something to this. But at the time, I wasn't experiencing it regularly. I had this one experience, which my husband told me I was crazy for, right? And nobody really knew whether to believe me. But the thing that really compelled me, Jason, was when I was reading and finding out that my experience really wasn't that different than what most people experience. At least 20, 25% of the world has experiences like this. And that made me feel a lot better.
And I think that because I've read that your experience is not uncommon, but it's in a lot of cultures, it's just not discussed. It's something that people don't talk about for maybe the same reasons as you in a lot of ways, because they might feel that, that people are going to look at them like they're going crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I was a corporate banker. I was running huge businesses, and yeah, I couldn't have people thinking I was crazy at the time.
I like that you sort of went down a route based on science and studies and universities. What did that kind of lead you to start to, what conclusions were you starting to come to as a result of the reason? I like the fact that in a way that I was reading books when I was first on this, and the thing when you get a book is it's the author's opinion, and you sort of think to yourself, how much can I relate to this? So I can relate to you going down a study kind of university route. That does make sense, especially with your banker mind, like you said, very analytical, science and fact based.
Yeah, I wanted to see facts and numbers. So, even things like research that was done on reincarnation, children who are reincarnated or have memories and knowledge that they wouldn't otherwise have. I always was looking for the numbers, because one person's experience, just like I assume this with your listeners, right? Like my experience, just because I'm telling you what I experienced doesn't mean that anyone should believe it, right? Like, you should be looking for a combination of things. You should be looking for numbers of people, or you should be coming to have your own experience so that you can see what that feels like. But yeah,
Sure.
there could be more research. Absolutely.
What was there anything compelling that you kind of during this period of research that you came across that kind of solidified it in your mind that, hang on a minute, I'm not perhaps going crazy, and I'm starting to see more than perhaps what am I getting at is through the research that you did, where did that sort of point you from that point?
I mean, kind of like you're looking for the linchpin, right? Like, what was the linchpin?
Oh yeah, I'm looking. Yeah, because I think your story is interesting as well. Because, and I'm going to come on to this in a minute. It wasn't for many, many years after that you first did your first mediumistic connection. So I guess what I'm getting at is it sounds like there was a prolonged period of research.
Yeah, I would say there's probably 3 or 4 years of just reading, and then maybe another few years of dabbling into experiences. And then I think the next major step for me was when my best friend from childhood found out that she had ALS, which is Lou Gehrig's disease. And they said she was going to pass pretty quickly. We had a chance to talk about death. And she told me she had been to mediums. And we talked about if she passed, she asked me if I would see a medium. And I was like, okay, like, obviously, what are you going to say to your friend who's dying, right? Like,
Yeah. Oh wow.
Of course I'd try it. And I really trusted her opinion, and I trusted the fact that she had had these experiences that she felt were really legitimate. So I did that. When she passed, I went to see a medium, and that medium, surprisingly, was not a well honed instrument. She was relatively new to her mediumship. I think she was just a couple of years in, hadn't been trained, hadn't been to like the Arthur Findlay College or anything like that yet. But she was extraordinary. It was extraordinary. I think I paid her for 45 minutes, and she gave me 2.5 hours of reading over the course of 2 days. And she could minute details that were so stunning. That was a pretty linchpin moment for me, because she clearly knew a lot of things that there was no way she could know. There was just no way.
Wow. I bet that was definitely an eye-opening kind of experience. And how did you kind of get from that point then to then starting to think, well, hang on a minute, I'm going to start exploring this myself as a medium? Because like you said, you were in such a high flying corporate career. And to leave that in itself is a massive big deal.
Yeah, that was It's funny because it was a big deal to walk away, but in the moment, it was so crystal clear to me. Everyone thought I was crazy, like, why would you do that? But I had complete clarity that there was something else I was supposed to do. I didn't know exactly what that was, but I knew it wasn't there. And I knew that I couldn't wait. I knew I had to leave now.
Mm.
So, I think that the path was after I had this stunning reading with
Mhm.
this medium, it actually, I think, opened me up to start having a lot of experiences myself. And they were accidental experiences. They were happening in my dreams. They were happening, in little wisps. Sometimes they were happening directly to me. Sometimes they were happening through a medium, through me to get to somebody else. But as I started to see the pattern of all these things emerging, I eventually realized that, oh my gosh, like they're using me to get to other people, whether it's directly or indirectly, and I should explore that. And that's when I went searching for a credible teacher. And that was also difficult to discern because the internet is full of people professing to be mediumship teachers. And if you're not part of a mediumship community, you don't really know where to start.
No, you don't, and I think that I found that very experience, and you sort of get to know someone who knows someone, and then eventually you arrive at maybe a place where you do resonate. I can certainly see why you was feeling that pull to go off and do that with all of that going on at the time. So who was it that you sort of was your eventual teacher? Where did you sort of start doing and honing your mediumistic skills?
Yeah, so my very first teacher was Suzanne Giesman. And it's interesting how I ended up finding Suzanne. So she was doing online classes. It was right at the beginning of COVID. And she was doing online classes. And I found her because there was a young man who tried to get to his parents through me, through a medium. I went to a grief retreat, I went to a grief retreat. There were mediums there. I had a reading, and the medium brought through a young man that I didn't recognize. I didn't know who he was, but they had so much, information, and they sounded so confident. I wrote it all down. I recorded it. And I suspected it might be my neighbor. But I didn't know that neighbor. I just knew that they had lost their son in,
Oh,
similar circumstances. And I didn't know if the evidence really fit because I didn't know the family well. It took me almost a year, Jason, to go have a conversation with that mother
I can
because
imagine.
who am I to go and say, I think I have your son here. Here he is on recording, right? But when I finally did, it turned out that it was him. She recognized all the evidence. And one of the pieces of his evidence led me to Suzanne Giesman. So he was my turning point, really. That young man, because I felt so horrible carrying him around with me for a year. He kept trying to nudge me,
Mm.
go talk to his mom. She finally Facebook friended me, and that was my clue. I was like, okay, maybe he's nudging her from the other side. I'm going to use that as my entrance, right?
What a burden to carry as well for a year of debating whether to do that. But it's so understandable because a lot of this stuff is, well, it's highly emotive. We're talking about loved ones. And, I've heard lots of stories of people having similar kind of experiences and being in real turmoil, not knowing what to do.
Yeah, it's difficult. You don't want to make anyone's grief worse, you
Mm.
help, but everyone has their own religious beliefs. Some people really don't like what we do and aren't open to it. And I just wanted to respect that. I wanted to respect their grieving period. But when it turned out it was him and that mother was very relieved to hear from him, I knew that was it. I have to go explore this in depth. I have to go figure out, can I do this? Can I learn this? And that's how I ended up in Suzanne's course.
I do know Suzanne. I think it's hard not to know who Suzanne is because she's got such a beautiful way of presenting, and she was one of the first people that I came across. So you went on that journey and started developing your mediumship. How did it kind of come about for you? What was it? Quite a natural process? Did you sort of? It sounds to me that you were having so many experiences. It sounds like it probably unfolded quite quickly.
It actually did. I think it was about 6 weeks of class when I started making purposeful connections. But like everybody else, it took me a good year of practicing to really start to be able to stop tripping over my own ego, stop letting my mind interfere. I knew that even though it was rough in the beginning, I think part of my corporate training helped me to have a thick skin. Like, I don't mind getting no's. I don't mind people telling me that reading didn't make any sense. That didn't bother me. I was going to keep going because here I had a credible teacher saying anyone can do this if you just focus. And I thought, well, I can focus. I can follow instructions. I can learn this. And I found beautiful communities online, through Facebook groups and through practice groups and things of people who were trying to do the same thing, everyone making themselves vulnerable at the same time for these experiences.
And you did your first connection in March 2020, which, this is, I think, where the story starts to get rather incredible because for what we're going to come on to talk about. But talk us through that, because how did you find that? Was it a good experience?
You mean learning to make a connection?
Yeah, yes, and the first time that you started making connections for people.
Yeah, I mean, it feels amazing, right? I mean, I think most mediums would tell you that, right? You feel their love coming through your heart, and it's like discovering this amazing place that's been in front of us but hidden all the time. I actually can't imagine anything greater that I could do with my life. And that in itself is such a relief, because I think we spend so much of our lives trying to figure out what's my purpose, like what could I do next, where do you achieve more, blah, 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 whatever, all the, things that we're taught to, try to find the pinnacle of our life. I'm not saying that I've achieved it all. I'm just saying, like, I think this space is amazing. And it's hard for me to imagine a more important space in the world.
I think that's very true. I think it sounds to me that you were very much tapped into your intuition, and that was what kind of got you quite far in your career. It sounds like you were sort of tapping into it, but unknowingly. And sort of when you look back now with the benefit of hindsight and time, can you see that in yourself now?
Yeah, absolutely. I can remember, as far back as high school, using my intuition when I would get stuck on tests, and kind of reaching up for assistance. I never put a name to it. I never even felt the need to try to define it. I just did it. I also found that in my corporate career, one of the things I enjoyed the most was I really enjoyed coaching people and mentoring people. And I used to get a lot of feedback that I was quite good at that. And people would say, like, I don't know how you knew that much about me, but it's like you're in my head. And now I understand what that was. That was psychic ability, right? And it's more than just a little bit of empathy, more than just the mirror neurons working. Yeah, I can look back and I can see how those skills were there earlier, but I wasn't like a child who was experiencing, my grandma, at the foot of my, that didn't happen to me, at least not that I remember.
And I want to come on as well to talk about VerySoul. Where did this come from? How was it even an idea or a concept? Because and I want to say to anybody who doesn't know what VerySoul is, well, we've got the perfect person here to tell us, but it is a fantastic tool if you were trying to develop your mediumship, and such a good idea. Tell us about how it came about, Sally.
So I think it was a couple of years into my mediumship. I'm not very good with the calendar. A couple of years into my mediumship, And I was doing some work with a couple of teachers. I was working with Jackie Wright. I was working with Eileen Davies, to really go deeper, and to really learn the art of deep blending, and the merge. And I think during that period, I wasn't putting boundaries on myself. I just wanted everything I could get in terms of spirit communication, in terms of the details. I was just open to all of it. And so at night, I started getting these downloads from spirit. And it was like, for me, it was like receiving corporate packets of information, like engineering plans. I'm an engineer by background in terms of doing restructuring and process improvement and technology and things like that. So the information was coming to me in a format that I could recognize. It was coming disparate. So it wasn't coming in order necessarily. But what I knew is if I didn't get up and write it down, I wasn't going to get to sleep. And when it first started coming, I did not know what it was. I just knew I had to go write it down. And I knew that I recognized it. It took me, about a week to start recognizing what it was. After a couple of weeks, I was like, oh my gosh, like no more retirement for me. But I honestly, even once I understood what it was that they were asking for, and the they being spirit, I said no at first because I had just retired. I was really enjoying my retirement, and I was really enjoying the community work I was doing. And yes, I was interested in being a medium, but to take on a whole platform, a whole business, that just wasn't, something
Part of
that
the plan. That wasn't the way it was meant to work out.
But then I talked to a few mediums who were good friends of mine by then, including Sarah Deverell, who I know you know well. And we all agreed the plan was just brilliant. And I can say that because it's not mine, but it was brilliant, and it did fill a need. And it was purposefully constructed to fill the gaps in the mediumship world, not to compete with things that were already there, not to add another. It was meant to fill the gaps. So, there's tons of great mediumship teachers around the world, and schools. There's, great circles and things like that people can participate in. There's community forums on Facebook. But what there was not was a good, efficient way for mediums to get practice. To go beyond just a practice, to also get diversity of input, diversity of experience, and then to move through levels towards having client experiences and providing their services to clients. That existed in a manual form in the UK, through the SNU, where, people do some free sessions early on. Right?
Yeah.
But this was a plan to automate that and to do that at a higher volume and to do that on a more global basis so that we were truly, doing outreach to the world, all socioeconomic, all cultures, all languages, et cetera, et cetera.
And I can totally see why there's a need for it, because it's very different if you're giving a reading to, say, a friend, or a friend of a friend, or doing it to a medium. Because I know when I've tried to develop my mediumship, doing it in front of another medium, you feel quite safe as well, and you feel that the person's going to give you good feedback, and there was definitely a need for it. And so you had the idea come to you, the concept. How did you go about then trying to get that to be, an actual platform with people on it? Because it's a complicated operation, Sally. It seems like.
Yeah, it took about there were 6 months of just doing legal work and financial work and, just structuring stuff, just getting the groundwork laid, even figuring out what to call it. The name did not come in the first downloads. The name came later. logos and trademarks and all that stuff people don't think about, but I knew we needed it. And I also knew that we had to get something started. So we started a very, very rough prototype in October of that first year. I think that was October of 2021.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I recruited 20 mediums, and 20 mediums played with me on a very rough prototype for about 2 months. And through that prototype, we came to some really strong conclusions about how this thing needed some of the finer details of how we could get this done. One of the most important aspects was, our very first prototype was expensive because we were using somebody else's technology.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember the day that I tapped into Spirit and I asked, this. It's got to be self-sustaining. It's got to be self-sustaining. Like, how many mediums should we expect? And I got back the number 10,000. And I was like, okay, we can't use that platform. We're going to have to figure out a different platform.
When you were getting these downloads, do you know who or where exactly they're coming from? Or do you know the entity of who is providing these?
Generally I don't. Generally I don't need to. I mean, I sat with it and I asked for that, or if it was important to me, I might get it. But it's not important to me. I just assume it's a combination of intelligent people who see this act. What they basically said to me is, we want to talk to our people. We want to reach our people. And we need more mediums, and we need more resilient mediums to get there. And we need an easier way for people to find them. So.
What an incredible story. Already to have that from the spirit world, but they want to get the message out there, and you are going to be the vehicle of driving this. What was your husband's thoughts during all of this period?
Even though he was angry with me about the mother-in-law incident at the beginning, he started to realize over the years that this was real. He's always been incredibly supportive of my career choices. We've moved multiple times for my career. He's always been a very supportive husband. So when I told him that I wanted to do this, he was very supportive. And, I don't know that anyone, even the people who thought this was a brilliant plan, I don't know that anyone could see quite where it was going as well as I could, because that had been shared with me directly. There's still things ahead that have been shared with me that I know are coming that are going to be pretty awesome. But he's been very supportive. So
that's lovely. So, VerySoul now is coming up to 3 years old. Where are you at as of current day? How far and wide is it now out there?
Yeah, so we're about 2 years from our initial launch of the practice platform. And we've got 10,000 users. We've done over 7,000, probably 8,000 client sessions already. We've got 2,500 mediums, which I know is going to increase significantly this year. We've facilitated 50,000 practices. I mean, imagine that. This is what I'm so proud of for our community, because I think of myself, I'm just one instrument in this incredible orchestra, right? The orchestra includes the teachers of mediumship, the students of mediumships, the people who really dedicate their lives to the practices and to the clients. Yes, it needs the platform, right, to make this work, but it's just one aspect. The platform without everything else is nothing. So to think about 50,000 practices and the skills and the energy and the healing that occurs 50,000 practices is amazing.
It's mind-blowing, especially in such a short time. What are you finding in terms of kind of the geographical spread then? Are you finding that it you know, because obviously culturally, you know, different countries have different beliefs, and how are you finding in terms of the geography of VerySoul and how it's kind of in terms of the world?
In terms of mediums or in terms of clients?
Oh, I guess both. I hadn't even considered it from both sides of the coin.
Yeah. So interestingly, you know, for mediums, I am constantly, I don't want to say surprised, happy to see mediums from new countries signing up. So I think we are at 47 different countries right now. Obviously, we have a heavier group in the US, Canada, Australia, UK, but we got 45, 47 other countries and new ones every day. Sometimes there's countries that I honestly haven't even heard of before. I have to go look them up and see where's that country. And the more far flung the geography, the more grateful they are to be part of our platform because they can't go down the street to a SNU church, or they, you know, it's harder for them to have a friend who can help direct them.
Even in the US, and because I've been to the Arthur Findlay College and spoken to a lot of mediums, it surprises me because I have been to the States a lot, but I think I forget how spoilt we are in the UK to have, well, I guess it's the SNU that drive it all, but you sort of almost take it a bit for granted being in England because it's just not like that culturally in the States.
Yeah, just imagine if somebody hadn't made that decision to start Arthur Findlay, you know, and to make that investment and to build that, and then all the people that keep it running and that keep it credible, you know, those, it's all part of the orchestra, you know, somebody was inspired to do that, right?
I love the way you describe that. What does the future look like for VerySoul? Where do you think it's going? What do you think's possible? Can you share any of these downloads potentially with us?
Yeah, I can share some of them. Here's some of them. So we will be 10,000 mediums probably before the end of this year. We're a little bit behind on our technology. I thought it would be end of last year, but it's coming soon. We are just now moving everyone. We're just starting to move everyone onto a brand new platform that we've built ourselves, that is specially created just to work in this space. There's lots of little details that are important for how mediums work and how clients find mediums and work with mediums. So that's part of it. We currently, like I said, I think at the beginning, we currently operate in 11 different languages. That includes one language that we do in translation. But what's coming is we will be at least 25 different languages, and our website will also be available in those languages. Right now, we just offer the sessions in those languages, but our website will be in those languages as well.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, carry on. I didn't realise there was more, Sally. Please tell us.
There is more. We have been prototyping a translation program in Russia and Ukraine. That's going so well. Such beautiful, beautiful connections happening in Ukraine. And thank you so much, Tatiana, for the work that you're doing as a translator for us. But we are building part of our platform to facilitate regular translations. So any medium who is of an experience level, where they can do a translated session, because that wouldn't be good for everybody to do, but just for those who are highly experienced, we can automatically link them with a translator when there's a client need, so that we can get the three of them together.
This is fascinating. Do you have any time to go on there yourself and practice, Sally? Well, like, can I ever log on and maybe get you on the other side?
And it's actually one of the things that's on my to-do list is to get back into my own work. Yeah, right now my mediumship consists of taking regular instruction and regular, inspiration about where to go, what to do next, who to connect with, how to get certain things done. Because every little thing about a business, either you have a big team to do it, like I did in corporate life, or you got to find the right connection. So I'm dependent on a lot of great connections.
How do you balance the scientific and spiritual aspects within the framework at kind of VerySoul? You know, the aspects of where people are. Actually, I'm not even going to interpret that question. I'm going to leave the question with you, actually. So I might.
Well, I think that the best way to talk about that is, Spirit's instruction was build no barriers, and they specific things that could be barriers, right? That we really try to go right down the center and make sure that everyone feels welcome, and that we don't create reasons why people wouldn't feel welcome. So we never tell anyone what to believe. If you looked at our website, you would see we never say your loved ones are still here. We never, we don't tell anyone what we believe. We simply offer an experience. And that is a very purposeful design. It's not because, we feel any less strong about our belief systems. It's because people are most influenced by their own personal experience. And so that's why the design of VerySoul is really structured on getting as many people as possible to come in and have a session. Even if it's a free session, it doesn't matter. Just come have a session so that they can get their own evidence and they can draw their own conclusions.
I think the work you're doing is absolutely fabulous. And I think that you should, well, I'm sure you must do, but I think from, one medium to another, from another country to another, thank you, because I don't know where I would have gone, because, for instance, I can't go to the development circle on a Thursday because I already have commitments on a Thursday. So, VerySoul is, and I know there's so many people going to be really excited to listen to this episode, but I just for people that, because I've just realised we've gone quite a long way through the episode without actually saying what is VerySoul and how does it actually work. Because I want to make sure that people fully understand, because there's going to be a lot of people thinking, this sounds like the most wonderful tool, Sally. I really like the sound of it, but what is it?
Yeah, so let me tell you what it is, and then let me tell you what it isn't as well.
Oh, yes, please. That sounds fabulous.
That confuses people sometimes. So VerySoul facilitates Zoom sessions between mediums or between mediums and their clients. So we work in all different time zones, and we allow each user to have the experience of booking their session or understanding their session in their own time zone, in their own language. And we help make those happen much more often. So for instance, it might have been in the past that for a practice session, you'd reach out on Facebook, you'd say, who wants to practice today? You might get one practice in, but you have to respond to all sorts of different people. And sometimes people don't show up, yada, yada, yada. With our platform, people can do 2, 3, 4 practices a day and ramp their learning faster because they're not in the administrative detail of it. So we facilitate practices between mediums. Then we use a number of different methods, including, as you can imagine, statistical methods, to see how people are progressing, to see how people are, see their dedication level, and to discern qualitative and quantitative aspects of how they're doing, to determine when they're ready for our first tier of client work, which is called our starter client program. That's where we have starter client volunteers act as sitters. We don't use that term, but that's basically what they are. They are sitters for the mediums who are more advanced and getting ready to go to the general public. Once you get through that phase, you move on to the next tier, which is called outreach clients. And this is where we work for free, but we're working with the general public. These are generally high need clients, and they're people who generally have never had a session before. So that's a great learning experience for the mediums as well. And then after that, once they show that they can really do that well, then they have an opportunity to be a professional on our platform. As a professional, they set their own prices. They get paid directly. But we facilitate the connection between them and the client, and we educate the clients as they're coming in, so that what the medium is getting is a client who already knows what's about to happen in the session. So we've just tried to make everything as streamlined as possible. So that's what it is. Can I say what it isn't, or do you want to ask your questions?
Please go ahead, because I don't want to. You go on such a beautiful flow. Please carry on.
Okay. So what it isn't is it's not a training program. We don't train mediums. Of course, they get a lot of development, through all these practices, and they get a lot of feedback every step of the way from each other and from their clients. It is not it's not a subscription process. It's not, it's not getting people ready for certification. There's no certification in the program. It's just a question of, do we think they're ready to be working with the general public or not?
There is something so magical about going on there, booking an appointment. And by the way, if you can't tell everybody, I'm a massive fan of VerySoul. But there is something so magical about when you turn up to the appointment and you just have someone you totally don't know sitting opposite you. Because if you were doing this experience normally, or you was in a development circle, you would, know of that person, or you'd know bits or pieces. Or if you were doing it through Facebook, you would know something about it. But that magical moment when the connection just kicks in and you're sitting opposite someone, do you know what? The first couple of times I did it, I found it quite funny, Sally, and I don't know why. I just found myself laughing because it is an unusual experience to just be sitting opposite someone. But it's also so beautiful because you don't know anything about that person whatsoever. So you know that when you're getting something, because one of the big things I've always, which I think we all have when we try to develop our mediumship, is it me, or is it my, imagination, or am I thinking, am I drawing something out from that person? VerySoul doesn't allow for that, because it really is practice, because you could be sitting opposite someone anywhere in the world.
Absolutely. And this is a big purposeful part of the design. The reason it had to be online, and it has to be without barriers, and it has to be global, is because that the diversity of that experience will develop mediums better, faster, broader. It's logical, right? One of the things that we saw in our first round of market research was the vast majority of clients for mediums at the time were middle-aged white women who could afford to pay between, $75 and $550 an hour. They had a network. They knew who was good. They knew who wasn't good. It was a very small group, and there's nothing wrong with middle-aged white women, because I'm one of them, but everyone has one spirit, and spirit wants to get to everyone. So, by casting a much broader net, we all as mediums get to experience a much more diverse range of spirits. And that by necessity develops better mediums.
Do you know what I also found as well about it? And is that, and I'm sure you've heard all these things a million times before, but I'll say it anyway. I feel less afraid of getting a no when I'm developing on that platform, because there is the element of, well, you don't know where the person is, you don't know who they are. So I found that it really sort of nurtured my confidence a lot more, because it got rid of that silly ego mind that was just chatting away. And is that something that you found is common feedback from people?
Yeah, it's always interesting. I get to see all the trends of, kind of the stages that mediums go through. And I'll get this all written down at some point. Right now, we're still building. But once we're done building, I'll be able to put this on better display for everyone of here's kind of the stages we see. But yes, there definitely is a stage when people first come to the platform and they are super nervous about getting that written feedback. They're super.
I was. And the last thing I wanted was a no-show either. I thought to myself, it may be reliable.
Yeah. And sometimes, mediums will reach out to me and they'll say, I feel like I was attacked in that feedback. And I'll read the feedback and I'll think, okay, well, from a corporate perspective, that would have been pretty kind, but I get it. We're all sensitive. So there is this, assimilation process that occurs. And the assimilation process isn't just the assimilation to the survey, but it's also the assimilation to each other, to this broad range of each other. For example, I had a medium say to me a couple of weeks ago that they felt like the session didn't go well because somebody showed up on camera, a client showed up on camera with their arms crossed, and they were clearly shut down. And, I always challenge us on that, and including me, because we all have these assumptions, to say, well, how do you know they were shut down? Like maybe their arms were more comfortable that way. Maybe they were in pain. Maybe culturally that's a norm. I had a grandma who loved to sit with her arms crossed like this. In some countries it's more common. It's getting ourselves past all those assumptions. So there's layers and layers and layers of those assumptions. We think we're open-minded, but spirit trains us over and over and over and over again. And they take us to some places in these sessions that are kind of break us for a while. And I think that's okay. I think that's purposeful. And I think, our model is to get people right back on the horse.
I think that's, I think that's such a good way to look at it. If people want to find out more about VerySoul, what is the website address, Sally?
Yeah, it's verysoul.com. That easy.
that was very lucky. Well,
verysoul.com. If you want to see anything about feedback we're getting or see some of our more recent videos, you can go to VerySoul app on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. And there's more to come.
Honestly, thank you for all you're doing to connect us budding mediums to each other as well. And, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a delight to talk to you, Sally.
It's so nice to talk to you too, Jason. And thank you so much for being such a supporter of VerySoul and for helping us get the word out. By the time this is broadcasted, we will have our new practice platform up and running. So if anyone has been a little bit skeptical about being able to navigate the technology, I would say come join us on the new platform.
Oh, well, I don't think you can't not. Honestly, I can't recommend it enough. Sally, thank you.
Thank you, Jason.
Well, there we go. That was the amazing Sally Hawke, the founder of VerySoul. Now, it's been lovely to have you with me today. I know it's been a little while. Do remember, it really does help the show if you can leave a review wherever you listen to your favourite podcast. And if you want to know when the latest episodes are out, just hit the follow show button wherever you listen to your favourite podcast. Do remember over on my YouTube channel, which is just search Jason Paul Soulsync, you can follow along with my mediumship journey where I'll be sharing lots of hints and tips, but not just on mediumship. I'll be talking about all things personal development over on YouTube. You've been listening to The Soul Sync. I've been talking to Sally Hawke. I've been talking to you too, obviously. But until next time, goodbye.